Hello, everyone. This is the Graphic Tome podcast, and I am your host, Mark T. Today I will be discussing one of the earliest comics I ever got into. Now, growing up, I was not super into comic books. I would get the regular issue every now and then. You know, it's a fairly common thing for kids growing up in the 90s to just enjoy comic books when they had the opportunity to do so, but I never tried to collect them consistently until much later in my life. So, around, let's say, almost 10 years ago, my best friend, AJ, he introduced me to a series that was said to have inspired Ben 10, one of my favorite cartoons from the later 2000 Cartoon Network. I love the show, I still love it, and I still say to this day that the entire original series, 4 seasons, is one of the best animated shows to ever be created. The later stuff can be very hit and miss, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, getting back to that, he told me that potentially Ben 10 could have been inspired by this comic book called Dial H for Hero, which is essentially a very similar concept, except rather than a watch like in Ben 10, it was almost like a clock, a dial, literally, with numbers that you would. Or actually, no. I guess the best example is like a dial on an old dial phone. You know, when you had to spin the wheel. That's exactly what it was. So our hero, depending on which version of the comic it was, the original hero was named Robbie Reed, a young blonde boy that wore glasses. He would dial in the letters HERO in the dial, and he would become one of the many heroes. Now, I had an interest in this for a while, and by complete chance, there was a new comic that came out. This was during the New 52 era, which is, again, very hit and miss, but AJ told me about it, and I was like, okay, that's cool. You know, I've been in the mood to collect comic books lately. Let's try it. And it was the first series I collected consistently. I have the entire New 52 run of the comic, which is called Dial H, and I love it. I'm not really sure what to say exactly. Again, I didn't have any previous example of this. I just seen like images from the comics previously, but from what I got from Dial H, it was very entertaining, and it was a huge step forward for me as a comic book fan. At this point, it's been years later. I think it was around 2012 that I fell in love with comics as a medium, and I have since collected many trade paperbacks, many separate issues. I have many things. Just for the sake of extending this podcast, I'd say my favorite comic book. I believe I've mentioned it in a different video, but there are three in particular. One of them is called Five Ghosts from Image. I do not know who the artist or writer are. I apologize. There's currently 3 trade paperbacks available. I don't think there's any more that's going to be coming out, but if you're interested, check it out. Look it up. Five Ghosts. Very, very entertaining comic. The second is a DC comic called Camelot 3000, which is essentially what if Arthur and the other Knights of the Round Table, as well as Guinevere and Merlin, were brought to a science fiction action world. And it was actually much more entertaining. It's only a 12-issue trade paperback. If you're interested, check it out. And finally, my biggest one is actually, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on any podcast or anywhere else. My favorite comic book character, not superhero, but character of all time, is actually Howard the Duck. Yes, the same Howard the Duck from the movies, although the movie is very, very different from the actual comics. I've read a few of the original comic books. I have an omnibus of the original, like, Marvel run of Howard the Duck. My particularly favorite run is done by Chip Zdarsky and Joe Quinones. And, yeah, it's very good. Again, check it out. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this slightly longer version of the Graphic Tome podcast, and I will see you next time.